Hi, this is Dr. Toby, your host on health and wellness. Thank you for joining our show today. We have a special guest, Dr. Carl Mangum, Associate Professor of Nursing at the University of Mississippi Medical Center, a psych nurse practitioner, a PhD in leadership, and the president of the Mississippi Nurses Association. He's a man of many parts. He's a father, he's a grandfather, he's a husband of nearly 40 years. He was left by his father who died early at the age of 13 and started with a single mom, raised him, and went from being a manager at a McDonald's to being a professor at a medical school, and today the president of the Mississippi Nurses Association. We have a fabulous man, but he's not just a man of fortune, he's a man of faith and family. He raised three sons. Two have served in the military, and all three are married to nurses, and he's done well in his family, in his faith, and his fortune. He's the head of his church deacon board. You would love to hear him. Get ready. Jesus is Lord. Hi, this is Dr. Toby, your host on health and wellness. Thank you for joining us. Don't touch that dial. We have a great show with Dr. Carl Mangum. Dr. Carl is an associate professor at the University of Mississippi in the School of Nursing. He's a psych nurse practitioner. He has a PhD in leadership, 5 degrees from associate's degree all the way to BSN, all the way to master's, two master's degrees and a PhD. And he's currently the president of the Mississippi Nurses Association, a 5,000 member association, and he's a man of faith. He's come to share his heart with us. He's come to share his secrets of family, future, and fortune. A young man, 13 years old, with a single mom, raised from Memphis all the way now to becoming a man of stellar character, a man who has impacted his sons, his daughters-in-law, and a lot of generations of nursing school students, and not just the medical students and other faculty and other staff in the University of Mississippi. We're honored, we're privileged to have Dr. Carl Mangum with us. What an honor, sir. Thank you so much for coming all the way from Jackson, Mississippi. So we shared a bit about your background and where you are, and wanted to ask you a few questions. I know in the Baptist church there's a lot of mission. So do you guys still do that in your in your area? Have you ever taken a missions trip,
Um,
or your church has taken a missions
yes,
trip?
we do mission trips to different. Actually, we do them to different countries too,
Hmm.
but we do different mission trips within the United States.
Okay.
A lot of them are out west. They go out and help build new churches or fix older churches that they moved into. I know Montana has been a hot area the past about 5 or 6 years
Mm.
that they've went out to help do. Honduras and Haiti used to be big areas that they went to. COVID, has put a kind of a stop on a lot of that here
Right.
recently, but hopefully we'll be able to get back to some of that here soon.
But you're part of the Southern Baptist
Southern
Convention that
Parties
has a
Commission,
big
right,
missions
right,
board.
correct.
I think the missions board chair was the famous pastor. He used to be in Alabama, Birmingham. He's very well known for his articulate speech, and he's written some books. So I know that the Baptist church does a lot of missions. What I was wondering was, do you think the nursing profession has a role to play in missions, and what do you think a nurse can do for a church body, even locally or internationally?
Um, I think a nurse role in a church body can be go back to even the old parish nursing, and a lot of nurses do that, and they serve in that role in their local church to help do things like health fairs.
Hmm.
Many times that they'll serve if someone gets sick or falls or gets injured.
Right.
The people in the church, they holler for that nurse to come. There are a lot of in my current church. There's probably 5 or 6 nurses in there. Um, a couple of paramedics, and usually when they holler for somebody, they always holler my name
Mm.
for some reason. But that's one of the things that they can do. But as far as the missions, yes, there's definitely still a need for that. And
Hmm.
a lot of these mission trips, nurses go on, they help provide a role. And a lot of these are medical missions trips too.
Hmm.
And they definitely provide a role in that, certainly. There's a place for service always.
When did you get involved with this disaster relief?
Actually, I got involved with this disaster stuff back in about 2003. Um, I was an inaugural member of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. I was able to find out about the National Disaster Medical System, and that's what it's called. And Congress moved it after Katrina, moved it back to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and that's currently where it resides, and that's who I work for. We're not volunteers, we're actually employees of the federal government. And so a lot of people don't like to hear federal government, but we provide a great service. And in the National Disaster Medical System, currently we're made up of three different sections or three different sets of teams. One are DMATs, Disaster Medical Assistance Team. One are DMORTs, those are our mortuary teams. And then we have veterinary teams. And so within the DMAT section or the medical section, we also have trauma critical care teams. There are three of them in the United States. There are 56 DMATs. There are 10 veterinary teams, and there are 10 mortuary teams. And my team that I serve on, I'm the team commander for Delta 1 DMAT, and it's the Disaster Medical Assistance Team. And we're made up of Mississippi and Louisiana. And so that's where our team comes from. And on a team, we have doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, pharmacists, and paramedics. Those are our medical core. We also have respiratory therapists. Then we also have ancillary personnel, team commander, myself, deputy team commander. Then we have communications, IT people. We have logistics personnel. We have training people, and they respond with the team, and they provide the support that we need on a disaster. Usually if we deploy a full team, it's 35 people. We can run 24-hour operations if we need to. And that's where I got involved with this. The past couple of years, most of our missions have been COVID-related. We're most known for our hurricane relief, response to large hurricanes and the disaster that goes on after that. We also do national security events, things like the President's inauguration. We do those, the President's State of the Union speeches. Like when the Pope was here a few years ago, we were involved in that. If the Olympics are ever on U.S. soil, we're usually involved with that.
It's coming. I think it's in Los Angeles.
Yes, it's coming back. There'll be the 4th of July, like on the National Mall in Washington. My team is going to be up for that soon. We were there in 2017, so our 5-year rotation is coming back up soon. But again, mostly it's the hurricanes is what we're known for, large destructive hurricanes. But with COVID, we've been really, really busy the past couple of years.
Why did they move it from DOD to DHS?
Well, from the Homeland Security.
Homeland Security.
It was, I don't know. You'd have to ask Congress.
Logistics, right?
It really is one of those things that they put the medical people back under the medical
services.
Right, and Homeland Security is more of a law enforcement type deal, and they felt that the medical responders would do better under the medical department.
Wow. So it's a paramilitary of some sort.
Yeah, it's and we say paramilitary because we have missions, we have orders, we have uniforms, and we're covered under the USERRA laws, the Uniform Service Recruitment Retention Act. And what it is those are the laws that protect the National Guard and the Reserve, Military Reserve, when they're called back to federal service, where the employer can't fire them, they can't hold them from a promotion, they can't demote them, they can't, they can't really do anything to them because they've been put on federal orders and called up to service. Wow. And we're the only civilians that act protects. So if the secretary or the president calls us up, we're protected under those same laws. So our employer can't fire us. They can't hold us from a promotion if we had one coming up or something like that. Now, they don't have to pay us. Our employer doesn't have to pay us because the federal government's going to pay us. And that's fair enough. And so that's kind of a lot of times people will say a paramilitary organization because, we'll have copies of orders and our uniforms, and we just actually switched uniforms, and because we were wearing BDUs, and they were either khaki or navy blue, so we looked a lot like military. But now we wear 511 khaki pants and a blue polo shirt with patches on it, and still has Velcro, but it kind of separates us a little bit. Still looks pretty cool, but we don't look as military as we did. So.
But the key is you guys never get deployed abroad.
No, that's not necessarily true.
Oh.
We can be sent anywhere in the world.
Really?
If we go outside of the United States, if we go, that would be OCONUS. CONUS is Continental United States, and yes, federal government, we have a lot of abbreviations. You have to learn to speak in letters. And so OCONUS, outside of the Continental United States, we can, like the earthquakes in Haiti a few years ago, we had several teams there. And then I know we've had other ones in the Pacific, islands in the Pacific that were non-territorial islands of the United States. Like if we were to go to Guam, that's a U.S. territory, so that's like being in the United States. But we can go to foreign countries, but it's a lot more logistical issues, and we have to be involved with the U.S. State Department and things like that. We just can't show up because we're all representatives of the federal government, and so a lot more involved for us to go outside of the United States. But 99.999% of the time we are in the United States. But we can be sent abroad if needed.
So you joined just before Katrina, or was it after Katrina?
I did join before Katrina. I was in 2003. And back then, when I joined, I was the commander of one of the nurse teams. Back then, we had three nurse teams, east, central, and west of the United States, and we had three pharmacy teams. But after Katrina, they moved everything back to HHS. They reorganized the system, and they took those nurse teams out, and they took those pharmacy teams out. And I had an opportunity to actually start a DMAT team, and that's how I got involved.
Well, that's all to hear your experience in Katrina. Yeah. Was it
my experience in
traumatic?
Katrina? Well, my experience with Katrina was not with the feds. My experience with Katrina was with local fire department and with the University Medical Center.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was kind of traumatic. We were out that day with I'm still a volunteer firefighter with the Byram Volunteer Fire Department, part of Hinds County Fire. And, yeah, it was kind of traumatic that day. I almost thought I was going to die a couple of times with trees almost hitting the fire trucks.
Wow.
But that next day I had to report to the University Medical Center, and I was assigned to the emergency department because they said I knew too much. But it was just busy. And then when we opened up,
the power failed, right?
Yeah, power failed. We were without power at my house for 14 days. But at the university, we have power because we have our own.
The generators were above, not below, because I heard the water level affected the generators.
Yeah, but we have our own backup power though, so we're fine at the medical center. It would be hard pressed for us to be without power.
Wow.
But we were fine and able to operate. But after that first day, when people started showing up, that was the first day everything is kind of calm, but then all of a sudden victims start showing up, and that's part of the issue is after day one, and we're that far north is when it takes that day for the initial people to start showing up. And so with the things that were open at the Coliseum and at the Trade Mart at the time, the old Trade Mart, we had the people that had come up to stay. And so the idea was to push out a clinic-type setting where we could treat the people there to keep the ER from being overrun.
Right.
And so I moved out with them and set up that clinic in the Trade Mart. And we had most specialties were there, and we set up tables out front to register people, and we had clinics certain hours of the day. And we were there trying to refill medications, people that had lost medications, because some of them lost everything they'd owned. Or we could get them a refill of medications. And many of the large box stores, pharmacies, would give them 5 days. It was either 3 or 5 days. I think it was 5 days worth of medications. And they had a pharmacy list. They wouldn't refill every medication, but they would talk to one of our physicians, and they would write them a medication, and if it wasn't on the pharmacy list, they would change it to another medication that would be close to that. and that they could write it for that. So they would go in, sit down with the doc, review their case, see what they needed, write the prescription, come out, they would turn it in, and then we would hand it to the representatives of that facility. They would go fill it in, and at a certain time, I think it was like 7 p.m. that night, they would bring everything back and fill it.
And you had people from New Orleans coming
Yes.
up, from
Yes.
Gulf Coast
Yes,
coming up
it was
here.
everybody, really everything from Jackson South
Wow.
to New Orleans. And so it was a pretty busy couple of weeks that we did that, and we went down and opened up every day. We had a lot of medications that we had on hand that we were able to hand out, that were prescribed, that we were able to do, and anything else would come from those large box store pharmacies that were willing to help us out and help the people out. It was really critical. But my main job was to stay out front where the registration table was and to keep order, because I was the biggest person there.
Oh, really?
So at the time I was 6'4" and about 350 pounds. So
You had a military-like uniform. So.
well, then I was wearing scrubs.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, so it was easy. And we had members of the Indiana National Guard had made it. The governor, had sent out for help, and so members of the Indiana National Guard were there. The governor of Indiana had sent them down. So I had them, Hinds County Sheriff's Department, Jackson PD, and so I only had a couple of people that really wanted to.
Was that power at the Coliseum?
Yeah, we had power.
Okay, so the backup generators were good.
Yeah,
okay.
so it was a.
How has
unique
COVID
experience.
been different from what you experienced in 2005, I think, or 2005?
The COVID experience total, we were. Let me talk about the National Disaster Medical System.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I've been deployed a total of, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks now during COVID with the National Disaster Medical System. So it was a long time. But we were first deployed when the cruise ships came in, and man, that seems like a long time ago, but it's 2 years ago this week, I believe. One came into Oakland, and the other one was docked in Japan. And at the same time, we also flew the Americans back from Wuhan province, China. I don't know if people remember that, but we had Americans in China, and the State Department had sent 2 airplanes to pick them up, to bring them home. And when those ships docked, and we sent planes to Japan to pick those Americans up to bring them home. And the plan was that they would be housed at military bases in quarantine. And they were in military bases, and I'm not telling you anything that wasn't on the nightly news, so there's no secrets here. I'm just repeating what was on the news. But they were in military bases in California, Texas, Colorado. There were some sick ones in Nebraska and at Georgia. And so they were distributed around the country. And once those people landed, and we're at the military bases, then the National Disaster Medical System was the one that was tasked with giving care. It wasn't the military, it was us. So we were assigned to those bases, and I had people at pretty much all of those bases from my team. My team went on call that month, but they called us pretty much everybody up, and we sent them to where they needed help. Me and some of my people were at Dobbins Air Base there in Georgia. And my job was the leader of the patient movement branch. I was the director of that branch, and my job was to repatriate the evacuees back to their home state once their time in quarantine was up. So I'm one of the few Americans that's actually worked at a federal quarantine station.
Wow.
In the country, and it's pretty much all of us
So
were
the
from
government,
NDMS.
the government gives them an air ticket back to their houses.
We had
their flights.
we had rented planes, and air crews and all that worked for us, worked for the federal government. And once the CDC released them from quarantine, we had medical crews that flew on those planes with them and got them back to their home state, and turned them over to the state health department, and then they were able to get home from there. They would provide them a way home from there.
What would you say to somebody who wants to join this national disaster relief? I mean, is it eligible for anybody, or what are the qualifications?
The qualifications are we need what we're looking for are for doctors. We're looking for nurses. We're looking for PAs. We're looking for nurse practitioners. We're looking for pharmacists, and we're looking for respiratory therapists. Those are the medical people we're looking for. Now, you need experience in emergency, ICU, critical care, those types of things. They like for you to have at least a year's experience. That's with most jobs, they want you to have a year's experience. There are no jobs currently posted, but there will be very soon, okay? And you go to usajobs.gov, and that's where the jobs will be located under the National Disaster Medical System. And for those of you here in Mississippi and Louisiana, you'll put that as your home address, and eventually those will actually get to me as the team commander for Delta 1 DMAT. And you put DMAT on there, and they'll actually get to me, and I'll be the one looking at those, and we'd love to have you. When we deploy, it's typically for a 2-week deployment, and then we're home on day 14, and you get you some rest, and then you go back to your real job. But we're covered under those USERRA laws, and so it shouldn't be an issue. You're paid while you're gone. We're under the GS levels, and so like a team commander is a GS 15, and that would be compared to military rank. That would be equal to like an 06, which would be a colonel in the Army or the Air Force or the Marines, or a captain in the Navy. So we're covered under those GS levels, and it depends on which job you're in, what those GS levels are. If you like traveling, being in austere conditions, sometimes we show up and there's nothing there, like Hurricane Katrina. There were no road signs, there were no buildings, there were no nothing. Many times we get to stay in a hotel. Other times you may stay in a tent. Sometimes you get to eat at nice restaurants. Other times you may be eating MREs. It's just, you just never know what you're going to do. Sometimes you have to hurry up and wait. Sometimes you may end up at a military base. Sometimes you may end up flying on military aircraft. Sometimes you may, you just don't know. It depends on the situation. One quick story, when we were at Hurricane Michael that hit Panama City
Florida.
Florida. We ended up down there. We were one of the first teams in because we were close, and that helped out a lot. But we ended up with 2 full DMATs at the same location. We were that busy. And in the 13 days we were there, we saw 756 patients. Wow. Just what we saw in our tents outside. Well, we sat right outside the front of the hospital, right between their front door and their emergency department. And we sent one of our paramedics in to work with their triage nurses. And as patients would come in, between them, they would decide if the patient stayed in there or if the patient came out to us. And so it was a very good system, and we saw a lot of patients, everything from a bar fight to someone that had a boil on their bottom, literally had a boil on their bottom. And then we saw kids, we saw, you name it, we saw it pretty much. So we ended up with a total of about 102 personnel there on that one site, which is a very large site. We had 5 ambulances assigned to us. And so we had helicopters that would start landing about 10 a.m. that morning, and then they would go all the way to about midnight that night. So we would just have helicopters one after another that would be coming in from downrange. And so it was a very unique situation that we were able to move in and help that hospital. They were running at about 156% of capacity.
Wow.
So those are things like that we do, and if you like that kind of challenge.
My question is, when they deploy you, do they send you a ticket, like an air ticket, or do they pick you up? How do you go to California, Wisconsin?
You fly on commercial airlines.
Okay.
You get deployed. They send you a ticket,
Okay.
and you get on the plane and go.
Wow.
Now for that actual deployment, we actually drove. If you're close enough,
City,
right? If you're close enough. They'll have rental cars for your team. They'll have enough for the team. And, of course, your team commander or deputy team commander will, call you and say, hey, we're riding. We're going to pick you up, be ready to go. But most of the time you're going to be flying. And you'll have a rally point at the location, the destination you're at, and all that will be told to you.
Wow.
And then we'll meet you there, and then you'll find out your assignment. And
so there's been a lot of backlash in the last 5 years on, you know, against the police, against the, I don't want to say the military, but against, I'll use the word constituted authority. You know, a lot of people felt they were overreaching, and you know, they now have this blue, people trying to defend the blues and all that. And you have two kids who served gloriously and gallantly in different spheres in the United States military. What prayer would you pray for our military? Because I am an advocate. My dad was a general, and I know what military men go through, and they put their lives on the line. And I think it's a disservice to be disreputed for the sins of one or two people. So, what would be your prayer for the United States military, especially with your children, Pat, who have passed through there? I mean, what would you ask what us as individuals to pray for the U.S. military if you had a choice?
Um, First of all, thank you for that question, and thank you for your dad's service. Um, as the father of two people in the military, and one of my sons has had 3 tours of duty in the Middle East in the past. So um, the prayers that I would have, first of all, is for their safety.
Right.
Second of all, is for good leaders. Pray that the leadership of this country makes good decisions, that they consult Scripture,
Right.
that they consult God, that they follow convictions of their heart, and that they take in consideration not only the men and women of the military, but God's will, and that they make prudent decisions.
That's right.
And you know, God sent a lot of people into battle, and if you read the Old Testament, and He sent people in there, and He said, destroy everything that's there. But that was under the law, and there's times that we as Americans are going to have to go into battle, and not all of us are going to make it. And there's times that we go into battle in the healthcare profession.
Right.
And I can tell you, the last couple of years with COVID, there's times that I've had to make decisions with the federal team when we were at different locations, that who was going in an area that we knew COVID was in, and who was going to go in and who wasn't. And there's times that nurses across this country have put their lives on the line to try to save other people. Doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, everyone. But for the military, I pray that these people, the leaders, not only the military but the civilian leaders, turn to God and ask for His guidance and leadership.
Guidance, right.
That's the biggest prayer.
Get man out of the way and just
Yes.
let God's will be done. And that's what we're praying for you, that the will of God be done. I hope this story of Dr. Mangum, his family, his faith, his fortune have inspired you to pursue your dreams. Look forward to seeing you again. This is Dr. Toby saying Jesus is Lord. God bless you.